Let's Go champ Shannon Briggs stormed David Haye's press conference today to announce his fight with Arnold the Cobra. I'll just call him that because I can't pronounce his surname. He stormed David Haye's press conference, and he was doing the same thing to David Haye that he's been doing to Vladimir Klitschko for a long time now, while, when Vladimir Klitschko was still champion. The difference being, David Haye seemed genuinely surprised and alarmed when Shannon Briggs stormed into his press conference. And, well, to me anyway, he looked a bit alarmed. Maybe he's just a better actor than I'm giving him credit for, but to me he seemed alarmed. And the security were on Shannon Briggs immediately, not allowing him to get anywhere near the podium. Unlike with the Vladimir Klitschko situation, he was allowed to get right on the podium or right next to the podium and, whatever. So, yeah, that happened. Fun and games, all jokes and all that. Let's go champ and fight me champ. And David Haye basically said, can you pass a brain scan? Can you pass a medical? If you can fight on my undercard. And I think that's a genuine offer. David Haye will have Shannon Briggs fight on his undercard. And in fact, some people are going to be saying, Hatman, don't buy into David Haye's acting. This is all contrived, and he's going to have Shannon Briggs on his undercard. This would be great promotion, actually, to get Shannon Briggs on his undercard, to have him storm in to David Haye's press conference. So maybe that's what it's about. I don't know. But either way, David Haye said, get a medical license and you'll fight on my undercard. And then maybe we can set up a fight between me and you later on in the year. That's what he said to Let's Go Champ. Now, I was watching an interview on IFL TV with Frank Warren yesterday. And Frank Warren seems disgusted that Shannon Briggs is still fighting. And he thinks it's appalling that people should be encouraging him, and appalling that any promoter should even consider putting him on one of their shows, because Frank Warren says he's 44 years old and people at 44 shouldn't be fighting. Well, tell that to Bernard Hopkins. He still was doing good work at 44. Now, obviously, Shannon Briggs is no Bernard Hopkins, but Briggs hasn't taken too much punishment in his career. He did take a terrible beating off Vitaly Klitschko, yes. That did happen. And he took a beating off Lennox Lewis, and he took a beating off Darryl Wilson. That was his first loss, but that was a very long time ago. But apart from those fights, he hasn't really taken that much. I mean, you could say that possibly in the Lakovic fight, he took some punishment, but it weren't that bad. The only real beatings he's taken was Vitaly Klitschko, Lennox Lewis, and Darryl Wilson. And the Darryl Wilson fight was only a 2 or 3 round fight anyway. And that was very, very long time ago. So there's a massive gap in between those beatings that he's taken. The Vitaly Klitschko beating was definitely the worst because he went on for 12 rounds. So this seems to be Frank Warren's rationale for, being adamant that Shannon Briggs should never be allowed to fight by anybody. He says that Shannon Briggs actually tried to get a license to fight in the UK about 5 or 6 years ago, but was knocked back by the British Board of Boxing Control. Now, that might have been shortly after the Vitaly Klitschko fight, because I think he had like a fractured eye socket or something like that, fractured orbital bone. So maybe after taking such a beating, the British Board of Boxing Control said, nah, not for now. It will be interesting to see if they grant him a license this time around, because he certainly hasn't been taking any punishment in his comeback. It's been all knockovers and, walkover jobs against cab drivers and journeymen. That's what it's been for Shannon Briggs. I think he's had like 10 straight. And the only one that went the distance was Rafael Zambano Love. And he certainly didn't take any punishment in that fight. So it will be interesting to see if he can get a British license. Do I think Shannon Briggs should get one? Well, I'm not privy to his medical records. I don't know the condition in terms of his brain and all that. But if his brain's okay, I mean, he don't have slurred speech. And as I say, he hasn't taken that much punishment in his career, Shannon Briggs. He hasn't been in that many wars, really, when you consider the amount of fights he's had. So if his medical checks out, then I don't see why he shouldn't be allowed to fight in Britain. James Toney, whose speech is incomprehensible, he was granted a license to fight in the UK. So if he was granted a license, why would Shannon Briggs not be? Shannon Briggs is definitely from a neurological point of view, it seems he's in much better shape than James Toney. So, yeah, do I want to see Shannon Briggs fight David Haye and all the top heavyweights? Not really. Shannon Briggs is way past his best. Don't be fooled by the physique. In terms of his fighting ability, he is long past his sell-by date. The guy's got 1 or 2 good rounds in him, if that. Even in Shannon Briggs' prime, which was a very, very long time ago, he had poor stamina. It's well documented that he suffers with asthma. So he had poor stamina in his prime and an even worse defense in his prime now. So here we are at 44 years old. He is far slower. I mean, he's not the slowest heavyweight you've ever seen at the moment. He's still fairly quick for a guy that size, but far slower than he was in his prime. In his prime, his left hook was his best punch. These days, he hardly throws any left hooks. He mainly concentrates on the right hand. So he's primarily a one-handed fighter. He has very, pretty much a non-existent jab. He just goes in there slinging big right hands and trying to knock you out in the first round. That's what Shannon Briggs does now. And he always was a fast starter. But like I say, back in his prime, he at least had a few more tools and more punch variety. Now he's just coming in slinging big right hands. No jab. Very few left hooks apart from a couple to the body. And he's slower than he used to be. His defense is worse than it used to be. His stamina can only be worse than it used to be. So he'd get destroyed by the top guys. But would it be fun to see him fight some of the lower ranked fighters? Yeah, maybe it would. Maybe it'd be fun to see him fight someone like Amir Mansour. Maybe it'd be fun to see him fight somebody like Ike Ibeabuchi, who a few months ago they were saying is going to make a comeback and fight on the undercard of Pacquiao Bradley Free. So, yeah, let these, if they're in shape, if they can pass brain scans, if they're not slurring their speech, then let some of these old guys fight. I don't see why not. In British amateur boxing, and I think this might be internationally as well, they have raised the age limit to, I believe it's 40 years old now. Previously, the age limit for boxing, international amateur boxing and amateur boxing in the UK, I think it was 38. No, sorry, 34 or 35. I think it was 35 it used to be. And now they've raised it to 40. So if even amateurs can compete in the Olympics and all this stuff until they're 40, then I don't see why pros can't compete at 44. I really don't get Frank Warren's objection to this whole thing. Maybe he's just upset because he believes Eddie Hearn is going to get the scoop on it and he's going to be able to promote Shannon Briggs. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't have any problem with Briggs fighting. To me, he's more entertaining outside the ring than he is in the ring, where, in the ring, he's knocking over journeymen. That's not very entertaining. Let's see him in there with somebody that can actually compete on his type of level. As I say, like an Amir Mansour, maybe an Ibeabuchi if he's still got something left. David Price against Shannon Briggs. That'd be a guilty pleasure. I mean, I wouldn't mind it. Shannon Briggs against Dave Allen. There are fights there for him. Lower level fights which could be fun, which people would definitely cheer for. But in terms of Shannon Briggs against the top boys, David Haye, Joshua, all these guys, come on, man. Shannon Briggs he's going to get destroyed by these guys. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on Shannon Briggs crashing the press conference and doing his Let's Go champ and all that type of stuff. Would David Haye fight him? To be honest with you, and this is saying something, I think Let's Go champ, even though I think David Haye would beat him, I think Let's Go champ is more dangerous than this guy David Haye's fighting. That's how bad it is. I think Briggs is actually better than this guy David Haye's fighting. Totally washed up, 44-year-old Shannon Briggs is better, in my opinion, than this guy David Haye's about to fight. Oh, gosh. So would David Haye fight Shannon Briggs? Maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he don't want to fight somebody that's that aggressive and has that type of punching power. Would I pick David Haye to beat Shannon Briggs? Absolutely. But given how carefully David Haye is managing his career at the moment, trying to take the path of least resistance, wouldn't Shannon Briggs be an unnecessary risk? A guy who definitely can punch in the early rounds, who does have a pretty good chin still. Would David Haye want to take that risk? A guy who's definitely aggressive, who's going to come swinging at David Haye. Would Haye want that? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. All right? It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.